welcome to episode 307 of Retro Encounter, RPGFan's weekly podcast of many topics. I'm Mike Sollosi, and today I am going to, how do I put this exactly? We're going to express some shame, express some remorse, and then forgive each other over the course of this podcast, but in a only celebratory, only positive way. We're bringing back a format that I had mostly retired in 2018, the Confessions episode. So, who is going to confess today with me? First of all, Zach Wilkerson.
Hello, I'm ready to engage in my shame.
And next of all, making his Retro Encounter debut, Cory Tischbein.
Hey there, thanks for having me, and please don't fire me when we're done.
We'll see, but you and I spoke ahead of the episode, so I know what you're going to confess, and we'll see. But listeners, maybe you haven't heard one of these episodes before. We did two of them, one in 2016, one in 2018, where three panelists, including me, confessed to not having played certain games or certain RPG series. And instead of mocking each other, or maybe we poked fun a little bit, but this was not only to express shame, more to just accept each other's gaps in our resume and maybe make some recommendations for how they could resolve those gaps in their resume. In the 2016 episode, I confessed to never having played a Suikoden game and never having played a Shadow Hearts game, and fixed both of those personal mistakes. And in 2018, I confessed to never have playing a Soulsborne game and never having played a what was the other one? I don't remember, but I still haven't played a Soulsborne game.
I don't remember either.
I probably should have listened to those episodes or re-listened to them, but it's a long time ago, and my memory is getting more fish-like with every month. So,
you and me both.
But anyway, we're bringing that back again. Each of us will confess to not having played two series of games, and then we'll discuss on amongst ourselves, how that person could best, make amends, so to speak. So I think, Cory, let's have you go first, because you do have the biggest bombs to drop here. But first, how long has it been since your last confession?
Oh boy, I think we're on 22 years.
Well, all right. Let's not start at the beginning, but only confess our video game sins right now. What's one series that you're somewhat embarrassed not to have played?
Well, I mean, I'm not somewhat embarrassed on this one. I'm incredibly embarrassed. And I think this first one might be particularly upsetting to you, Mike, because I think this series actually inspired one of your Twitter handles. So I'm hoping that we can work on a path whereby you can forgive me and let me be on more podcasts after this. But I've actually never played any of the Shin Megami Tensei games.
Does that include Persona?
No, it doesn't. Thank you. I'm feeling more hopeful for redemption right now.
Right.
Thank you.
So only main series SMT. Maybe you've played at least one Persona, maybe a little bit of Digital Devil Saga, or a sprinkling of Devil Survivor in there.
I've done one of those things.
All right. So what's your impression of SMT? What do you think it is, and what's either keeping you from it, or what's your limited experience with it?
Well, my impression is that at least the mainline entries are a darker, much more difficult, but equally lengthy version of Persona. So I've heard SMT3 in particular is tough as nails.
Zach, SMT3. That seems familiar.
Indeed. I will let Cory finish before I tell him that I sort of agree.
I'm sorry to hear that. But my understanding is that all the SMT mainline games, or most of them, I think they take place in modern day Tokyo, which is sort of novel. And they deal with some kind of an apocalypse, which I'm kind of a sucker for games themed accordingly. And I've also been told that the games center on a cast of teenagers, kind of similar to Persona. Does that all sound right to y'all?
Mostly. Okay. They all deal with the apocalypse. They all deal with a Tokyo overrun with demons, and a player character making contracts with the demons and battling demons, and maybe slightly going to a demon side themselves, and making choices to how to, if not necessarily undo the apocalypse, how to survive in the apocalypse. And I don't think they are all about teenagers. They seem like adults in SMT4, and they mostly take place in modern day Tokyo. But SMT4 is also a weird exception because it's about like this weird utopian city, and Tokyo is like below this floating city in ruins or something, and you're like a team from the floating city on an expedition to old Tokyo. Sort of. It's I haven't played SMT4, so it's definitely more complicated than that. But Zach, you and I played Shin Megami Tensei 3 Nocturne a month and a half
That we
ago or
did.
so for the podcast. And for both of us, it was a struggle, but I think we came out with slightly differing opinions on it.
That's true. So I mostly agree with your read, at least in terms of SMT3, Cory. It is certainly darker than a Persona game. Even I'm playing Eternal Punishment literally right now. But certainly darker than a Persona game. But in terms of difficulty, and I have said this a lot, based on my one experience with SMT, I didn't think it was necessarily incredibly hard. I thought it was just like weirdly cheap and not very fun. Like I never thought anything was like super challenging. It's like, but it basically, like, to put it in terms of that, I think everyone can at least mostly agree with, like, the fights are like a puzzle. And like you have to like figure out like a particular kind of weakness or a particular kind of mechanic that they're doing within the turn-based system, and you have to, like, kind of make your build based on that, which is mostly fine. There were times that I found it incredibly frustrating, and it's certainly less character driven than Persona, but it is more atmospheric than Persona. I did not personally love Nocturne, so your sin has been absolved by me personally, but I am not necessarily, because until Nocturne I would have had the same confession.
Was it very grindy? Was that why it was frustrating, or was it just
No,
repetitive?
it was a little repetitive. It was frustrating because, like, you would go into a fight, and let's say, for example, like, you are going against a boss and they literally can only be hit by one thing, and that thing is, for example, lightning. And if you don't have any personas or demons on hand that have a lightning spell, and you don't have any fusions available that give you a lightning spell, then, like, you have to, like, do some really strange things to make it happen. It just became like a get into a fight, either not be able to engage the mechanic fully and still get by, or don't get by it and then, like, have to reset and then do it again. But, like, it would never take me more than once, because once I figured it out, it wasn't hard. It was just like a lot of menus, a lot of tinkering, and I don't know, a lot of menus and tinkering was what I thought it was, honestly.
And I think of SMT3 more positively than Zach, even though he and I both had to sort of crunch to finish the game in time for the podcast in August. But I like menus, tinkering, and collecting demons, so that those parts of the game appealed to me. It does have a SMT3 specifically, at least, does have a less character-driven story than Persona does, but or than any Persona game does. But it was like sort of philosophy-driven and environment-driven in a way that I thought was at least interesting. I mean, I also like puzzle boss fights. So for me, the more frustrating thing was the dungeon design. It was, some of the dungeons were just too long or too obtuse, with things like teleporter puzzles or or dead ends with trapdoors that basically you had to explore almost every inch of them to properly get through them, and I didn't love that. But overall, I really liked Nocturne, and I think that it is, Cory, it is a very, very fine option to get into SMT. Again, I still like most of the Persona games and Digital Devil Saga more, but I really enjoyed Nocturne. I've heard only good things about Shin Megami Tensei 4. If you can find a 3DS copy of that for cheap, that might be a great choice to get into it as well.
Mm.
And I mean, SMT 5 is not far away, like something like less than a month.
Yeah, it's November. I mean, by the time this goes up, yeah, it'll be about a month. Yeah.
Right.
That might be my entry point, especially after what each of you just had to say about SMT3.
I mean, I didn't hate SMT3. I think I would have liked it more if I wasn't on such a crunch. But yeah, I think it was like after I got to the end of those dungeons, or like when you're going through dungeons where you have 6 different boss fights, which that Thunder one or Lightning one had, like, I was just like, oh my gosh, I get it. Like, I always got it. and I was just like, okay, now I need to reset and go like deal with this now.
I know. I very specifically remember that boss. It's boss like 3 or 4 out of 5 or 6 in
It's when you
one
have to like
dungeon.
select the correct statue.
Yep.
Um,
It was the boss was Moat, and it was in the Diet building dungeon. But I just don't
yes.
remember. I just don't remember exactly how many bosses were there. At least 5.
Yeah, it was a lot. It was a second to last. It was the penultimate dungeon. So, yeah, yeah. It was a thing. I didn't particularly enjoy that thing, but it wasn't terrible. I respected what it was doing. I just didn't enjoy what it was doing.
So yeah, Shin Megami Tensei. It has all of that Atlas flavor that many RPG fans love. In fact, people mockingly would call RPG fan SMT fan for how positively we reviewed Persona and Nocturne and other SMT games in the 2000s. But Cory, don't worry, you're not going to get fired just because you can't call yourself an SMT fan yet. But it looks like Nocturne 4 or 5 might be fair entry points for you, but we should maybe wait for a review for 5 first, just in case it ends up shocking the world and being a true lemon, although that's not what I would predict.
Yeah. It seems kind of unlikely, but
yeah. All right, well, speaking of things that seem unlikely, I'm going to go with one of my choices next and confess. Listeners and Cory and Zach, if you follow me on Twitter, you might notice that I have a Mega Man raising his fist avatar. And that's because I enjoy Mega Man and many of his forms and iterations over the years, but somehow I have never played a Mega Man Battle Network game, which is unusual because I was playing a lot of Game Boy Advance games in the early 2000s. I love Mega Man almost unconditionally, and there's a lot of Mega Man Battle Network fans on the website. I don't have a great excuse why I haven't played one, except that I don't know. By the time I was interested in them, like there was something like 4 of them, and they were mostly getting expensive, and I just wasn't sure about the combat or the format, and had more than enough other video games, both RPGs and not, to play instead of Mega Man Battle Network. So, Cory or Zach, could either of you enlighten me a little bit on what this game is?
Unfortunately, I cannot. I think it's turn-based. The fact that that's the way I'm saying it indicates how little I know about Mega Man Battle Network. I will say that Cory and I's picks are much more shameful than this.
yeah, this is sort of niche. I mean, my only exposure to Mega Man Battle Network was that in the late 2000s, I worked at a Toys R Us, and somebody stole a copy of one of them, and we had to have an investigation. And I just vividly remember that trauma.
Probably because Mega Man Battle Network 2 was going for like $70 in 2009.
Yeah, I mean, it's certainly a sympathetic heist, but I never played it either. I remember kind of always wanting to play it. I also think it's turn-based. It had a cool art style. And I liked, as a kid, I played a lot of the mainline Mega Man games, but I never made my way to the Battle Network series.
Yeah, I don't think I've ever played. Gosh, this is another confession. I don't think I've ever played a Mega Man game to completion.
Sometimes the end game in Mega Man can get pretty challenging.
Yeah,
so
like
yeah, go ahead.
What I mean, like when I was a kid, like this is like rental era, and so like I rented Mega Man 2 a lot. And my cousin is like super into Mega Man, and or at least he was. And I don't think I was ever good enough to beat one. Like I have Mega Man X on my SNES Classic, and I'm like, oh, this seems fun. And then like, oh, this is also hard. And then I quit. It's kind of how
okay.
I've definitely never played Battle Network.
Two things. First of all, for Mega Man X, fight Chill Penguin first, because the upgrade in his stage will help you in every other stage. And second, I know a little bit about Mega Man Battle Network because, of course, I've done research on it because I am who I am, I guess. But basically, you know how a Mega Man game will typically have 8 bosses in that boss select 3x3 grid? Yeah. Imagine 2 of those 3x3 grids next to each other, and Mega Man's in one grid and a bunch of enemies are in the other grid. So you, by moving around your grid and doing attacks somewhat frantically at times, and with, you know, both enemy attacks and your attacks having very specific areas of effect, is kind of how combat works in that game. Again, I haven't played these, only done a little bit of reading about them. And there is a sort of Pokemon catch-em-all element, looking for chips and upgrades and being able to build Mega Man in that way, although he's usually called Mega Man EXE. And some of the Mega Man Battle Network games had multiple versions, like a Pokemon Red, Blue, or Gold, Silver, that had some bosses and some chips in one and not the other. So like all of those confounding factors made the games a little bit more intimidating and somewhat less compelling to me. It's like, this, I don't know if this is my Mega Man, and this battle system looks weird. I'm just going to play Final Fantasy Tactics again. Uh, kind of attitude toward it. So I would like to play them. I've struggled to connect with modern Mega Man games like ZX and Star Force. And although I really enjoyed Mega Man 11 when it hit a couple years ago, so and shoot, there was a Kickstarted game that is a lot like Battle Network that people were talking about. I think early this year, but yeah, my memory of podcasts from February 2021 not the best.
I do not know.
But Zach, I guess all of us could confess to not having played Mega Man Battle Network. I'll have to message Caleb or something to see what the best starting point is for those. But Zach, there is another grid-based game that we can talk about today. That's one of your picks.
So I shamefully have never played a Disgaea game.
Oh, this wounds me. I played so much Disgaea in the 2000s, including the times when I could have been playing Mega Man Battle Network instead.
So it's kind of a strange thing. So like, I know, because I know you're both of my picks, as you mentioned before we recorded, were kind of geared at you, Sollosi, because I need to have things to say about them. But I don't always love tactical RPGs. Sometimes I think they're a little not that tactical, and just sort of about like making sure that you hit things in the right way. And like the first tactics RPG I ever played was Final Fantasy Tactics.
Mine too.
And everything from there just doesn't live up to it. And so like I sometimes I'm like, with tactics games. I've never played a Fire Emblem. I didn't say this, but I've never beaten a Fire Emblem game. I've played a number of them. But like the ridiculousness of it and the big numbers of it, that sounds like my jam. And that sounds like something I need to play. And so I will definitely play Disgaea 1 at some point. I've got it on the Switch. I will play it. But yeah, I've never touched them.
Okay, now I have a lot to say about this, but Cory, I'm going to give you a chance first. What's your background with Disgaea, and maybe something you could tell Zach about it?
Unfortunately, I think I'm going to need Zach to check to see if the confessional can fit too, because I've never, ever played a Disgaea game. And I all I know about Disgaea is that you can get to something like a level 1,000, and the numbers are just completely off the wall. And for me, that's a turnoff. I find that kind of overwhelming. And so I've not ever thought too hard about the series. I'm open to leaving this podcast, on a mission to play it, but I'm in a similar boat.
All right, well, okay, to the surprise of neither of you, I wholeheartedly recommend you guys try Disgaea. And Cory, you're not wrong. You can level up to 9,999, then reincarnate back to level 1, but with higher base stats, and level up to 4 9s again. And in fact, doing that multiple times is how to maximize your characters in this game. But also, perhaps surprisingly, like the final boss of the story in Disgaea 1 is level 89 or 90. Like just playing through a Disgaea game is just a wacky strategy RPG with a lot of jokes and some demons and angels and humans nonsense cast about. I know that maybe Zach doesn't love puzzle bosses, but the grid based stuff in Disgaea is less about strategy and more about solving the map's puzzle and then attacking your enemies with some combination of smart combos and brute strength. You can win by grinding in Disgaea, but you don't really need to, because there's so many weird tricks and gimmicks, and like finding the tricks and then exploiting them a little bit to make your characters gain 15 levels at once instead of slowly one by one is part of the fun wackiness of Disgaea. And the storylines are completely parody, anarchy, jokes that are sometimes great and sometimes fall very flat. I'm not going to defend all of the humor and weirdness in Disgaea, but I really like the series, especially 1, 2, and 4. There was a remake called Disgaea Dimensions that I thought was kind of weak, and Disgaea 3 is not bad, but I just like the other 3 more. and I haven't played Disgaea 5 or 6 to my own shame, but that's not this kind of confessional. But Zach, if you have the Switch version of Disgaea 1, that's a perfect starting point. Cory, you can really start with any Disgaea game that you want that looks interesting or you can find on sale. Just know if someone completely comes in from out of left field and seems to know everyone, that they're probably from an older Disgaea game, but it's not important. The stories can get surprisingly sweet and poignant in the Disgaea games, but they're not as important as just like the amusement of crashing down in riding a giant meteor into a group of enemies, or leveling your sword up to level 100 and then finding a better sword at the boss inside your sword. Like that's the kind of goofy exploitative stuff that you happens in a Disgaea game. You have to bribe or beat up a demon judge to have him pass a law that improves your chances at finding an item. Like that's the kind of stuff that's going on in these games.
I mean, it seems like you're almost describing like my favorite elements, and I hate to bring this series up because you're gonna get mad at me. My favorite elements of Yakuza.
Oh, sure. Why would I get mad?
Because Yakuza 0.
Oh,
with that game.
Okay. Now I am mad. All right, I remember why I should be mad. Like I love Yakuza. Why does he think I would be? Oh, right. Okay.
I'm
right.
sorry.
It happens.
But yeah, I mean, like I like that kind of like vaguely satirical, nonsensical, just like I might not love like strategy RPGs, but like that's not why I would play this game. You know what I mean? Like I would play it because it's so wild and goes so hard all the time. That sounds like the kind of thing that I want to play.
You should play it, or at least give it a shot if you already own one of them.
Yeah, absolutely. I plan to.
So Cory, even though you're afraid of leveling up into the thousands, are you 1% more interested in Disgaea now?
I'm like a solid 10%. I also
mission accomplished.
Yeah, and Disgaea, it seems like one or more entries may always be on some kind of a sale on PSN. Like I've definitely, I can make this happen.
Oh yeah, I haven't played Disgaea 5 yet, but I totally bought it on sale because it was 75% off on Switch one time. So they're not. It's not the PSP, PS2 era anymore. You can find these games easily. The accessibility shouldn't be an issue, but wrapping your head around what Disgaea is and embracing it rather than being intimidated by it, that might be an issue. So, but I encourage both of you and our listeners, give Disgaea a try. I've only been trying to get a Disgaea game on Retro Encounter for 4.5 years or so.
I've voted for it every time it's come up.
Unsuccessfully.
How long is a standard issue Disgaea game? Like, are we talking like 20 to 30 hours, or am I devoting a month of my life?
Just beating the storyline, maybe 40 hours, maybe 40 to 50.
Okay.
But if you want to get real weird and beat the super bosses that are level 6,000 or more, and unlock every single dumb thing to unlock, then you're starting to go into maybe triple digits, which is my experience with Disgaea 1 and 2. 4 I like as much as those, but just because of time management reasons, like I couldn't go deep into the end game for Disgaea 4. But like beating the game normally between 30 and 45 hours, say, exploring everything Disgaea has to offer. Maybe don't play any other games for a month.
I don't know that I need that right now, but I'm still interested.
That's fine. Like beating the Disgaea games, just going through the main story and having a laugh with it is great. I that's probably a healthier way to play it. But if you really want to go to the deep end of the pool with Disgaea, it is almost unfathomably deep.
Speaking of unfathomably deep.
Sure. I was looking for the right transition and maybe you found it. Cory, if Zach picked Disgaea to target me a little bit, I'm concerned your second pick might be targeting Zach a little bit. Why don't you give us your next confession?
Before I do that, I just want to confirm with you both that this remains a healing space, a space of redemption and acceptance. Like, we're still on the same page, right?
Yep. Positivity and acceptance, and we will do our best to educate you and recommend to you.
I'll do my best.
All right, so this next one has been weighing on me quite a bit for a long time, but you actually recently had maybe a month of a podcast about one of the entries in this series that I listened to.
We have
And
done 3 months on this series technically, or at least three games, of which Zach was on 2 months and I was on 2 months.
well, that does not make me feel better. But recently there was one, and it made the game sound really, really up my alley. So I know this is a big fan favorite at RPGFan, but I've never played any of the Suikoden games. Yeah, I know. If you want to take a moment, if you need to sit with that, Zach, that's fine. We can just take a breather.
Okay, can I start?
No, not yet. Cory, first, I want you to continue a little bit. What's your impression of what Suikoden is, and maybe a reason that it's missed you?
All right, so, and I say this not only to get back in Zach's good graces, but my perception is that it's probably one of the best series I've never played. I mean, it seems pretty lighthearted, much more so than SMT. I know it's a turn-based RPG series. It's based, or at least some of the entries at least, are based on a classical, acclaimed Chinese novel, which sounds appealing and makes me want to play. I know that in one of the games, at least, you can collect something like 108 protagonists, which sounds awesome, although also intimidating, but still awesome. And I don't have a great reason for never really having played it. I didn't know what the series was, though, until maybe the mid to late 2000s, because at least where I grew up, the marketing for Suikoden was not great and didn't do much to elevate it over the pack of more, I'll say, mainstream games that ate up a lot of my attention, like Final Fantasy and Dragon Quest. Like I remember Suikoden 1 and 2, late 90s, early 2000s at my local Toys R Us, but I remember not really seeing any advertising for it, didn't know what they were. It just didn't ping. And since then, I mean, I've heard a ton about the series, obviously, and it's been super promising. But, you know, I say I want to go back and play it. It's probably my biggest confession to make here today. But I don't really know how to go back and play it, because it seems like if I wanted to do that, I would need to dig up a PlayStation 1, 2, or 3, which doesn't sound appealing. Is that right?
Or PSP or Vita.
Correct.
Okay.
Those work as well. But Zach, let's have you not correct, but what can you say that might help Cory in his Suikoden journey?
Zach, correct me all you want. Please go to town.
No, you had it right. I mean, like, so every mainline Suikoden game, and actually even a lot of the spin-off games like Tierkreis, and there's one that's being fan localized now as well, allows you to collect 108 stars. So you have 108 protagonists, which I know, and it probably sounds very intimidating, but actually in most games it's pretty natural, especially 1 and 2, which are the ones that I would recommend the most, and especially because those are the two that you can play on PSP and Vita. 3 and 4 you'd only be able to play on PS3 at this point, and 5 you'd have to send me a DM in Slack and say, Zach, can I borrow your copy of Suikoden 5? And the answer would be yes. But yeah, so I mean, you captured a lot of what the games are, but I think that one of the things that really distinguishes Suikoden from other series is the maturity of its storytelling. Because it's interesting, because you listen to Suikoden 3, it sounds like to me, and Suikoden 3 has really strong storytelling overall, but it is not, in my opinion, one of the strongest entries, because one of the other things that distinguishes it is that it has like a pace to it. Like Suikoden games move, like the first two in particular, they move. They're fast, they're quick. You could beat Suikoden 1. I mean, I can beat Suikoden 1 like in 10 hours now, but like the first time through, you can probably do it in 15. Suikoden 2, 25 hours probably to collect all 108. And when you collect all 108 stars, because you don't have to collect all 108 stars, you get a true ending, which sometimes I'm not sure that I like better than the non-true ending, which I don't want to go too deep down that rabbit hole. But
okay, pause for a minute. I think this true ending in Suikoden 2 is crucial, and in Suikoden 3, it's maybe not crucial, but it's at least good. Is that fair?
I think that the true ending in Suikoden 2 I have some real issues with. Is it crucial? I agree. Yeah, I mean, I think I've gotten, obviously I've seen them all, but I really don't like what they do with one of the main characters and how he treats some people. We've talked about this before.
Yes, I agree with that, but I also in general love that true ending in spite of the decisions of one character.
It's Suikoden 5. I don't think it's crucial. Let's put it that way. And Suikoden 5 is definitely where it is the most difficult to collect all 108. There are some real shenanigans you have to go through in that game. That's like an 80-hour game too. So Suikoden 5, I don't think is a place I would start. But Suikoden 1 and 2 are snappy. They're quick. Great characters, great stories about like usually two clashing forces. It's always like going to be like very like this country against this country, and like there are reasons for it, or they're rebelling against the country they live in. And there aren't a lot of like true villains in the Suikoden series, except for one, which is probably the best RPG character or villain of all time, which is Luca Blight in Suikoden 2, which we also have an episode about. They do characters so well. They do so many things so well. Suikoden 2 is my favorite game of all time. So I think it's just amazing, and I could go on, but I will stop talking.
You've done a much better job than their marketing team. I'll tell you that.
If you've ever seen the cover of Suikoden 1 in this country,
yes.
Oh my goodness,
it's incomprehensible. I owned Suikoden 1 and 3 and tried them, but never really got into either of them until we decided to play Suikoden 2 for the podcast in 2018. Yeah, 2018. So my first real Suikoden experience was playing Suikoden 2 for the first time. And Zach was selling it just right. That game is breathtaking. It moves at a good pace. There are some incredible moments of drama. The combat and boss fights are always at least pretty good, except for a few strategy battle sequences let's not talk about those. Collecting the 108 characters and building and filling your castle town with them is hugely satisfying and fun. And it's not like, Cory, calling them all protagonists is a little misleading. Some of them are as simple as finding a blacksmith that's marginally better than a different blacksmith. But some of them have dedicated side quests and big personalities that are super fun. And then I played my second Suikoden game in Suikoden 3 for the podcast earlier this year, and thought that game was not quite as good as Suikoden 2, but a really, really solid PlayStation 2 game. I like Suikoden 2 and 3 a lot. I think 2 is better than 3 for reasons that have been well documented on our niche circles for more than 20 years. But they're worth seeking out, and I do want to play more Suikoden games soon. I think that it would not be out of character for us to try and play a different Suikoden game for the podcast. If not this year, maybe next year or the year after, in advance of Eiyuden Chronicles. Is it Eiyuden Chronicles singular?
It's Eiyuden Chronicle. Yeah, it's correct.
Chronicle. You're right. Okay. I realize I had said it wrong somehow.
Yeah, it gets as a person who's proved things, it gets said wrong all the time.
Yeah, I believe it. But anyway, the creator of Suikoden, or at least its biggest architect at the beginning, kickstarted a game, Eiyuden Chronicle, very successfully a little while ago. That had many RPG fan staff's hearts aflutter. Let's say.
I was maybe at the top of that list.
But Cory, maybe again, I was on the podcast for Suikodens 2 and 3. Zach was on the podcast for Suikodens 5 and 3, and all of those games are at least really good and worth seeking out. I don't know what your access to a PlayStation 1, 2, 3P or Vita are, but if you have a chance and the price is right, I would recommend any of those.
I may or may not be on eBay right now. Just gonna drop that.
Excellent choice.
Physical media, not dead yet.
You can buy them online, 1, 2, 3, and 4, and they're going to be way cheaper. So
5 is a little hard to find.
Except for 5.
I did a little bit of looking around for 5 a couple months before we did that podcast, and I wasn't able to find one at a reasonable price, so I decided not to do the podcast. It wasn't close or anything. This was months in advance, but. That's one of the most beloved of them. Like Leona is a huge Suikoden 5 fan.
5 and 2 are the two best ones. Yeah, for sure. And 1 is right there. I love 1.
You know, I agree that 3 wasn't as good as 2, but I thought that just like the 108 stars in 3 had a lot of personality. Mm-hmm. Just finding all of the people in 3 was really fun and satisfying.
If that's something you value, then 5 does that better than any other game in the series. Like the 108 and 5 are just outstanding. Like, it's a pain and it's a long game to get all 108, but they're amazing. Like the way they flesh them out, and it doesn't have the same localization issues that 2 does. But yeah, it's a great game.
Is there any realistic hope for a remaster or a re-release?
I mean, Konami's just put out a Castlevania remaster, so maybe.
They've put out 3 Castlevania remasters in 3 years, but one of them very recently. So Konami's not really in the business of making new games anymore, but they damn sure are in the business of re-releasing their older ones. There's also that Contra pack that is that was released, I think, at the same time as the second Castlevania one that has all the old arcade games in it. So again, I don't think it would be totally out of character for a Suikoden re-release, but I haven't heard a peep about it, and having them go into a full remake would be unlikely just due to the amount of text in those games, I think.
Yeah, I think a full remake is pretty unlikely, and I also think that getting a re-release on Switch would be unlikely for anything except 1 and 2, just because 3, 4, and 5 are all PS2 games that are likely a little more challenging to port properly. But 1 and 2 are, I mean, and one of the last thing I will say is I would play 1 before 2, just because those 2 games are so interlocked in my head, because they take place like 2 years apart from each other. And that's one of the things we didn't talk about. Like, each game like builds on, it all takes place in the same world, and they all build on each other, but they all live on their own. Like, Sollosi played 2 without having played 1, and he still loved 2.
That is
but
correct.
I think there is a special kind of beauty to Suikoden 2 if you've played Suikoden 1 first.
That's consistent with what I've heard. I did not play Suikoden 1 before 2. I loved Suikoden 2, but every indication is that it is quite rewarding to play 1 and 2 back to back. And a Suikoden 1 and 2 collection on any modern system would be, I think, very, very well received.
I'd be awake until 3 a.m. Don't worry. I'd buy it whenever it came out. I own them both physically and on my PSP, and I would still be up until 3 a.m. to buy them.
I own 1 physically and both of them on PSP, and I would also get that collection. But all right, speaking of remasters and recent collections, sure, why not? The next my next confession is for some games that have had somewhat recent remasters, and which means I have fewer reasons than ever to not play them. I am, in a broad sense, for my next confession, saying BioWare D&D games. I have never played Baldur's Gate or Neverwinter Nights or their sequels, other than maybe trying to create a character in Baldur's Gate 1 in a friend's place, because I think he told me Baldur's Gate 2 was his favorite game of all time. This would have been in high school in the early 2000s. And all I know is that they are sort of the games that put BioWare on the map, a beloved developer that is maybe going through somewhat hard times recently, because the less said about Mass Effect Andromeda and Anthem, the better. But Baldur's Gate and its sort of action RPG spin-off in the same setting, Neverwinter Nights, are both really beloved games. I think Neverwinter Nights 1 has 6 expansions, maybe more, plus fan-made modules over the decades. Baldur's Gate is in that old Infinity engine with that sort of paused to take for characters to take actions and but when you unpause, enemies sort of follow the same rules as the players, but it can act quickly. Really excellent writing and characters, pretty robust character creation with a lot of options, and multiple endings and sort of story paths, and also being set in the D&D, I want to say 3.0 universe, and the Forgotten in a setting called Forgotten Realms. Again, I also haven't really, this is maybe a bigger confession, I really haven't played D&D for more than a single session. And this is not a video game RPG, which again is the focus of RPGFan.com, but I am simply just not a pen and paper RPG guy, and maybe that is part of why I could never get into the Baldur's Gate or Neverwinter Nights games, despite trying 2 of them at various points many, many years ago. And I know that there's a person named Drist who people seem to like a lot in one of them. But yeah, can you guys educate me a little bit on these Forgotten Realms D&D RPGs?
I cannot. Your story is actually very similar to mine. Like I think I sat down to play D&D one time and I was like, that was fine. And I never did it again. Because it seems like a lot of work. And I have kind of dabbled in some of those BioWare games. I mean, like I've dabbled in Knights of the Old Republic too. Like I actually don't think this is also embarrassing to admit. I don't think I've ever played a BioWare game to completion. So I am maybe not the right person to ask about this. I'm a JRPG person through and through, I suppose, in some ways, which means that I have not played those games.
Well, to maybe clarify it a little bit for myself, I adore the Dragon Age and most of the Mass Effect games. I've played the first 3 of each of them and expansions to a couple of them. And part of what makes me love Dragon Age Origins so much is for how JRPG it is. Mm-hmm. It's the most JRPG feeling Western RPG I've ever played. But and I've also played Jade Empire, which I thought was pretty good. So like I enjoy some BioWare things, which made me interested in old BioWare stuff, but I never really put meaningful time into any of the Forgotten Realms games or Knights of the Old Republic.
I can give you, I guess, an intro course on these Baldur's Gate games. I played the first one to completion just last year, actually, and I played some of 2. And I was in a similar boat. I had played maybe KOTOR and like very few other of these BioWare classics. And I wasn't expecting it, but Baldur's Gate 1 at least really held up. I mean, I had a lot of fun with it.
Was this the Beamdog remake that you can find on Steam and other places?
It was. I got it on Switch. I think it was just a port of what are they? They did like a remaster like 10 years after the release. I think it may have just been a port of that.
Okay, I think those are the Beamdog ones, but I would have to do more research than I prepared for this podcast.
Likewise, but Baldur's Gate 1 was good. I mean, one of the things that really struck me was that right off the bat, you can actually explore most of the game's world. It isn't quite open world, but you're free to wander as you please. And obviously you'll get crushed if you wander into an area with high-level monsters, but there's a really invigorating sense of freedom to the game that I hope I won't get knocked too hard for saying this, that I don't always find in JRPGs. I find more commonly in Western RPGs.
Linearity, or let's say non-linearity, is more of a feature in Western RPGs than JRPGs. And again, it differs very strongly from game to game, whether it's more or less linear. But speaking in generalizations, that's totally fair.
And this game is perhaps one of the least linear games I've ever played, which I thought was really freeing and kind of exciting for, 10 hours, 12 hours. And then you reach the other side of the coin in that the game does not hold your hands at all, and it's really hard. I think I wiped more often than I actually cleared encounters, and I had to save maybe every 5 minutes, which I understand is pretty common for at least the first Baldur's Gate. You'll walk right into a level 6 boar or something, and then you go 20 feet, and there's like an end game boss, or not an end game boss, but some super high level creature that just kills you on sight. And so it can be kind of frustrating dealing with that. Thankfully, that's something that few Western RPGs really do anymore. Baldur's Gate 1 at least had a really appealing art design that I thought held up pretty well. And I thought the soundtrack was pretty good. I mean, it really fueled you for battle, and it didn't have any voice acting, and I was okay with that. But that might be a turnoff to some. The only thing, Mike, about Baldur's Gate that really, I guess both of you, that you might not love, you have to really like the D&D mechanics underlying the combat, because that's why you're playing. That and like developing a character as you please. It really takes center stage, the battle system.
Yeah, the character creation and class system is very appealing to me, because I love class systems as much as anyone an RPG fan. But the dice roll mechanics I'm less enthused about, and the non-linearity is something that I find a little overwhelming. Like there's a very non-linear Western action RPG from, oh my God, probably 15 years ago that I love, called Sacred. and the size of the map and the ability to accidentally go too far in one place was more scary than appealing to me. So I'm not sure about the nonlinearity of Baldur's Gate because I would just worry that I had missed something that was a little too close to the starting area. But that just might be my JRPG brain poisoning my tastes and preferences.
Well, it's frankly annoying to kind of get hit with the game over screen without warning, and the game doesn't do the best job of there are autosave features, but I think they could be a little better.
The autosave is probably new to the recent versions of the game because in 99 or 2000 or whenever Baldur's Gate 1 came out, they definitely didn't autosave for you.
Yeah, I mean, they definitely tried to modernize it some. There's an easy mode, for example. Playing on Switch, you can't install mods, but they actually loaded the game with a couple mods that make things pretty simple if you want them to be.
There's a huge community of player-made mods for both Baldur's Gate and Neverwinter Nights. I saw when I was doing a little bit of research for this podcast, I saw that there was a 2019 update to Neverwinter Nights 1, which I think is a 2002 PC game that also had like a PS2 version. So mod support and fan communities are not a weakness of these. It's thriving and out there, and probably could add modern conveniences to these games, even if you play the older versions.
Yeah, and I misspoke some. When I say mods, I mean kind of in-game options that the developer added in that are inspired by some fan-made mods. I don't think that the mods themselves that folks created are in the game, but just as you say, it does make things more convenient, and it simplifies things. And Baldur's Gate needs that, at least the first one.
Well, thank you. I am now a little bit more interested in playing these Baldur's Gate. Probably the PC remakes is what I would concentrate on, because that just seems right, playing an old BioWare game on PC. But speaking of games whose very first entry needs some help to be playable in the modern age, Zach,
Nicely done.
It's true, but it's incomprehensible unless you already know what game we're about to talk about, like Zach and I do. Zach, what is your final confession for this episode?
I have never played an Ys game.
Well, you're already starting off on a good foot because you pronounced it correctly. So, what are your impressions, thoughts of Ys as a non-player right now?
It's funny because I've been aware of Ys for almost 2 decades now. I feel like as a reader of RPGFan for a very long time, in the early 2000s, I was seeing reviews for Ys Book 1 and 2 for the TurboGrafx, and people were saying really positive things about it, the storytelling's really interesting, and it's got this mood to it that's really fascinating. And I was like, oh, I should play that. And then I was emulating a lot, but it wasn't super easy to emulate TurboGrafx CD games apparently, so I wasn't really able to do it at that point. And then it just kind of fell off my radar, and I've been aware of them over the years and have heard that they're good. I know that Origin's supposedly good, Seven's good, Oath and Fogana. I own all of them on my PC because they're free basically on Steam during the Steam sales, and I want to play them. But I've also gotten the impression that they're a little bit light on story, and maybe the combat's a little bit basic sometimes. I have heard that. I'm not saying that is necessarily a negative. I'm not I like action RPGs sometimes, but it's never really seemed like something that is super compelled me. Oh, this game is amazing and you must play it. I've never really felt like I was in that position with these.
All right. I definitely have some thoughts on this because I'm somewhat of a born again Ys fan. I didn't get into the series until maybe 9 years ago, something like that. But Cory, what's your Ys background to share?
Until recently, I was where Zach was, but like he mentioned, these games are always on sale, and I scooped up Ys 8 earlier this year.
That counts.
Yeah, and that's the only one I've played, but it was a lot of fun. If you like fast-paced action RPG combat, Zach, you should definitely give it a look. But you did hit the nail on the head. The story, its presence, it like kind of propels you forward, but you will probably not think about it much after the game ends. And I don't know if I'd say the combat is basic. It's a little, it veers toward being simple. But there are lots of combos that I, didn't spend a whole lot of time playing around with. But if I wanted to, I could have. And I think there's a lot of complexity there. The world, at least in East 8, is really pretty. It's kind of cool. Like you are on a ship and you are attacked, I think, by some kind of sea monster, and you wind up on this remote island, and you discover the other castaways who survived on the island, and you form sort of a home base, a village. So there's a cool like town building aspect to it. Definitely not the most compelling story, but everything else about the game I enjoyed.
All right, where to begin? The thing is, Cory, you talked about East 8, and Zach more casually mentioned East, Othin Felgana, and Origin. Those are almost two different worlds of East, two different chapters of it. There's a I hope I don't go into over explanation mode here, but there are basically three versions of East. There's what I call Lawnmower East, which is the first couple games where you deal damage by just walking into enemies, and if you walk into them directly, you and the enemy both take damage. If you walk into them at an angle, they take damage and you don't, and if they walk into you at an angle or from the side or rear, then you take damage and they don't. They're like sumo wrestling or mowing a lawn. They're weird. But they're not bad if you are at least intrigued by that late 80s sort of proto RPG, action RPG. So playing East 1 or 2 is a fun experience, but more for, going back after playing a better East game, I think, and if you want the education of East 1 and 2. But those have been made and remade multiple times for the PSP, DS, PC. There's a lot of ways to play East 1 and 2. Zach, you do not need to emulate a TurboGrafx 16 anymore. But then you have the next era of East, which I call the hipster Zelda era, where East 6, Othin Felgana, which is a remake of 3, and East Origin, which takes place 1,000 years before Adol, who is the main character of all the East games, was born. Those are sort of walking around big dungeons, sort of hack and slash RPGs, where the combat is basic. Adol will only have maybe or a Unica in the case of East Origin will only have a couple different sword moves, and then between 3 and 5 spells or special abilities. Like it's like a top-down Zelda game, but with fewer items, but faster action. And I really, really like those, especially Othin Felgana and East Origin. Those are both great games. I played them both on PC, but you can also get them on PSP. I think Origin is on Switch and PS4. But they both come highly recommended by me. Then the third chapter of East is what I call Hipster Secret of Mana, where all of them have a party of 3. Adol is the main character, but he meets a colorful cast of anime weirdos along the way. And it's a little bit button mashy, hack and slashy. Like every character will have a bunch of skills, but it ultimately just comes down to like dodging and guarding well while pulling off your strongest combo at the opportune moment. It can be there isn't a ton of nuance to combat. I would compare it to maybe a Dynasty Warriors game, or a Musou game, I guess, because that series is definitely not just Dynasty Warriors anymore. But those have been really, really successful. I think that East 8 and East 9 are like the two best-selling East games, and East 7 is only PSP and PC, but East 8 and 9 are PC, PS4, and I think Switch and other systems as well. And Zach, if you're interested in East, I would recommend almost all of them. Like from Othin Felgana onward, just pick which one looks cool. Like Othin Felgana and East Origin are more about dungeon navigation and sort of using and top-down combat, while East 7, 8, and 9 are much heavier on story. Oh, also Memories of Celceta, which is a remake of old East 4. They have much more story and characters. The last 3 are very focused on item collecting and map completion. In East 8, you're looking for other castaways that were stranded on the island. In East 9, you're looking for intrigue in this giant dungeon underneath the town that you're living in. There's more story in the later East games than the previous ones, to which point I think there's almost too much story. Like East has been slightly trailsified over the couple years, over the past couple of years, because instead of being about adventure and dungeon crashing, it's become, they've built a lot of lore over the years with things like Tribe of Darkness and and an ancient civilization of angels, and intrigue around taking down the empire that's slowly taking over the world. Ys has been building on its own lore more in the past, say, 10 years than they have in the previous 20 years of Ys. And I would recommend playing any of them made after 2000 that look good, Zach, because I've played almost all of them, and I like almost all of them. So, yeah, I've been talking too long, but do you have any questions, or are you at least a little more interested in Ys than before we started recording?
I mean, I think that you've made me maybe slightly more interested in Ys and also a little more educated on it. I mean, I guess I was kind of aware of some of those like different eras, and like that there was like this weird like side-scrolling Zelda 2 era.
Yes, that was in the 90s with the original version of Ys 3, and that's why I thought Ys was bad for a year, because
Right.
I played that on the Super Nintendo, hated it, then didn't play Ys for a decade, then played literally its remake for Oath and Felghana in the early 2010s, and like, oh, this game is dope. I want to play all of them now, so I did.
Yeah, I feel like Memories of Celceta and Ultimate Felghana are the two that have always struck me as the best starting points, or maybe Origin has struck me as well. Like I definitely have interest in it. I want to play it. It's just like there's always something else. It's what it boils down to. There's always something else. Mostly Final Fantasy 14, but always something else at this point.
And none of them are the biggest commitment. Origin and Felghana are both in the 10 to 12 hour range. The old 1 and 2 are really short. Like, I think 1, you could probably beat 1 in 3 hours and 2 in 5 hours. But then the recent ones, like 8 and 9, are probably 40-hour RPGs. Memories of Celceta and 7 are in the 20 to 25-hour range. Like, again, they're becoming bigger and more story heavy and robust. And I almost wish that they would harken back to the days of a 12-hour Ys. But that's definitely not where it's going. They're going with bigger and more with Ys.
Especially if the last two were successful.
Yes.
Yeah, they're not going to go in a different direction. And Nihon Falcom like has like a particular thing nowadays. So
yeah,
long games.
They want people to get their money's worth. They're targeting the kind of people that say that measure games in hours per dollar, which is not me. But I did play 8 and 9. I wrote the RPGFan review of Ys 9, and I thought they were great, but I also wish I thought they were a little bit much.
Fair enough. So still Felghana, Memories of Celceta, Origin. Okay. They're all on my PC. I'm looking at them all right now in my Steam library.
I think this is a slightly uncommon opinion, but I really love Ys 7. It's either my favorite or second favorite. And
okay.
I think it's because it's like they hadn't quite gotten obsessed with map completion like in later Ys games. And it has the most Dogi of any Ys game, and Dogi's my favorite character in the series.
That's an excellent choice.
Yeah, and also he there's 2 or 3 twists in that game. A lot of Ys games have surprise twists, but the story twist in Ys 7 I think hit me the hardest of all the Ys stories.
Okay.
So it's although we didn't mention it yet really, but 7 comes very highly recommended by me. It was originally PSP, but now it's also on PC. So let's see. We've talked a little bit about how Cory has yet to play a Shin Megami Tensei or Suikoden game. Zach still has Disgaea and Ys missing from his resume, and I have never put hard time into Baldur's Gate, Neverwinter Nights, or Mega Man Battle Network. So I think that's enough confession for today. We can go, have some of the communion wine, and then go and feel our own private shame until it's time for our next confession, which according to the pace of this podcast won't be for another 2 or 3 years. But listeners, thank you so much for listening to us confess our RPG sins over the past hour-ish. And thank you, Zach and Cory, for agreeing to appear on this podcast, because the last time we did a confession, neither of you had joined the site yet, which made me think it was ripe for another one of these, and also makes me feel a little old. So thanks for that.
Don't worry, I'm still older than you, Mike.
No comment from Cory, I noticed. But listeners, if you want to find out what the future of Retro Encounter holds, some shockingly cogent to what we talked about today. Next week we're doing 2 episodes, or let's say the first of 2 episodes on Cosmic Star Heroine, that mid-2010s retro style RPG from Z-Boyd Games. I have just barely started it, but fortunately it's not exactly a 100-hour Disgaea post-game level of RPG, so I should be able to finish it in a timely manner before part 2. But following Cosmic Star Heroine, we're doing 2 episodes in November on Ys Origin, a game that we casually mentioned over this podcast.
I wasn't sure if you were going to mention it yet or not, so that's why I didn't say that.
Yeah, no, it's less than a month off, so I don't mind bringing it up. Ys Origin's really good. It's the only Ys game that does not star Adol Kristen, because it has because it has multiple characters, multiple story paths, and a lot of connections to stuff that happens in Ys 1 and 2. I think every boss from Ys 1 and 2 is in Ys Origin in some form, but we will talk about that in those episodes next month. I have not played Ys Origin since I binged and played like 6 Ys games in 3 months, in the neighborhood of 2013 or 2014. So I'm excited to revisit that for the first time in a long time. But also in November, we're doing 2 episodes on Star Trek video games. Star Trek has had a number of games over the years, including at least 2 pretty interesting adventure games. So fortunately, one of RPG Fan's biggest Star Trek fans and biggest adventure game fans are the same person. So those Star Trek games, we're doing 2 episodes on Star Trek, and both of them will be hosted by John O. Logan. But if you want to email us or contact us about Cosmic Star Heroine, Ys, Star Trek, Mega Man Battle Network, Disgaea, who your favorite Star of Destiny is, you can email us at retro@rpgfan.com. Put the at in the wrong place there. Or also visit rpgfan.com's message boards, our Facebook page, our Instagram, our Twitter, our Discord, our YouTube, our Twitch. All of them are named RPG Fan or RPGFan.com. Please interact with us however you choose. You also can listen to 3 other fine podcasts on rpgfan.com. There's Random Encounter every 2 weeks about randomness, Rhythm Encounter every 2 weeks about RPG music, and Phoenix Edge usually every week, usually about current events, but always something interesting to talk about. You can listen to Retro Encounter or those other 3 on Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Spotify, all of the usual podcast venues. Please listen. Please provide feedback. We love listeners. We love feedback. But if you want to give us feedback at a more individual level, let's share our social media accounts with you that we are willing to share, starting with you, Zach.
You can reach me via email, zachw@rpgfan.com, or you can find me on RPGFan's Discord at zachw.
And Cory.
You can find me on Twitter. My handle there is CoryT810, and you could email me at coryt@rpgfan.com.
And listeners, the best way to find me is probably Twitter. I am at The Real Monsoon most of the time, at Evoker for Dogs other times. Evoker for Dogs is a Persona joke, but I think my current handle on Evoker for Dogs is a Shin Megami Tensei joke, which Cory referenced earlier, and I think I forgot to properly acknowledge when he did. But if you don't want to find me on Twitter, I am also on the RPG Fan Discord as Monsoon Mike. So I don't know about the 2 of you, but I feel much better having confessed that I have never played a Mega Man Battle Network game and didn't notice until literally yesterday that Mega Man Battle Network has like 2 select screens next to each other. It only took me, 20 years, let's say. But let's have our next confession in less than 20 years. Thank you. Good night. Good luck.